on everyone, it's Mr. West. I hope we're all well. So welcome back to another installment in the Ultimate Video Test series. And this time is for a highly requested subscriber stroke follower handset, and that is the Huawei Mate 20 Pro. Now this is a very photo-centric handset. It does take absolutely stunning still images, but I wanted to see what it's like with moving video. So the main aim of this series is to show you a demonstration of all the modes available on the smartphones that I test, so you can see firsthand if it's the right smartphone for you as far as video is concerned. So we're starting with the front-facing camera on the Huawei Mate 20 Pro, and it's a singular 24 megapixel fixed focus camera. It has HDR, it's not auto HDR, you have to toggle it on and off. So this is with the HDR on. The image you saw beforehand was with the HDR switched off. Now it uses what Huawei calls AI HDR, so it automatically adjusts the balance of the image on the fly to get you the best results. Now the front-facing camera also has electronic image stabilization, and it can record video at up to 1080p at 30 frames per second. Now the electronic image stabilization is what Huawei like to call AI stabilization, and it's quite smooth. You can see it's doing a good job keeping everything steady to the left and right, and also behind me as well. Now we're currently in the lowest resolution available for front-facing camera video, and that is 720p. So as with every video test, what we'll do first is we'll do a quick run to test out the image stabilization and see how it fares with a bit of speed, and then we'll move on to exposure and see how the front-facing camera handles that. Exposure behaves exactly the same in every mode. I've tried it already. So we're just going to look behind me by here. So we're looking out over into the valley there. Now the Huawei P20 and also the P20 Pro did have some issues with clipping with brighter areas of sky with the front-facing camera, but that seems to have been banished with the Mate 20 Pro. Now I'm not sure if it's using a different sensor. We can see it's doing a really good job of adjusting the exposure as I move the handset around. Just look at these trees just when coming up now, and it just seamless. Does a really good job. And if I move, you can just see the AI HDR doing its work there. As I move the camera around, you can just see the image getting slightly brighter or darker to compensate, which is cool. So we'll switch to 1080p now, so we get a little bit closer to these trees behind me. So we see the closer that we go, obviously the resolve detail is better, and the further away that we go, obviously it does lose a bit of sharpness. The main aim of a front-facing camera obviously is to highlight the subject, of which it's doing a good job, I think. So there's one other mode available for the front-facing camera. Now because I've formatted the video to fit the screens of most modern smartphones, that is 18:9, which is the wider aspect. That particular option, which is 1080p Full HD Plus, where it fills up the whole display, there's no point me doing that, because all it essentially does is crops in the image to fill up the viewfinder when you're actually recording the video. So I won't be doing that on this particular occasion. So that is the front-facing camera video on the Huawei Mate 20 Pro. Nice and stable, nicely exposed here as well. I'm sorry we can't have a better day, but I can't choose what the weather is like where I live, unfortunately. But that is essentially what you're going to be seeing if you choose this handset. So we're going to move now to the main rear cameras and show you what that's all about. So before we start the actual video test itself, we'll just give you a quick rundown of the actual cameras on the rear of the device. So it starts with a 40 megapixel wide lens, a 20 megapixel ultra wide lens, and an 8 megapixel telephoto lens. It's got a dual tone LED flash, phase detection autofocus, laser autofocus, panorama, HDR. It's not auto HDR, it has to be toggled on or off. Also uses Leica optics, and it can record video at up to 4K at 30 frames per second, and every video mode is supported with electronic image stabilization, or as Huawei calls it, AI stabilization. Now that can't be toggled on or off, so you're stuck with it on, and as I said, it supports every single frame rate mode. So the electronic image stabilization is nice and smooth. You still get a little bit of wobble in my footsteps. You can just about make those out there. I do feel it's a little bit too smooth. That's not a bad thing. It's all very subjective and down to personal opinion. And if we go down this lane here, we can just use the wide angle lens to showcase just how much wider the field of view is. Now you can see there's a definite difference. Everything seems a lot further away. But I think it's great. It's a really good option. Okay, so this is 1080p at 30 frames per second, and this is in the standard mode. So if we push the zoom option, we can see the substation sign a bit closer, and if we move again, we then get a much wider angle. So before I get to the dirt track, we'll just show you optical image stabilization with a bit of speed. That is the wide angle at 1080p at 30 frames per second. It's really great for getting things like these trees into the field of view. Whereas if we went back to the standard mode, everything seems just that little bit closer. And if we just zoom back out again, we can see there allows us to get a much broader image of those trees, and great. And once again, that EIS is doing a really good job of keeping everything nice and stable. Okay, so this is 1080p at 60 frames per second. And so those are the trees that we've just passed there. Now at 60 frames per second, you should be able to get a better sense of smoother movement. Now unfortunately, the Huawei Mate 20's camera software does mean things get a little bit choppy when moving around, especially at higher speed. And looking out over the distance there, we still get a great view of everything there. Those wind turbines have disappeared into the cloud because we're so high up. Now interestingly, you do get another mode available with the Mate 20 Pro, and that is 1080p at 21:9. Now if you're watching on a standard 16:9 display, you will get much thicker matte bars top and bottom of your display. Whereas if you've got a 18:9 display, depending on the height of the display, so the Mate 20 Pro and the OnePlus 6T, for example, do have a slightly taller 18:9 display, you may have minimal black bars but a much wider field of view. Now, because the camera lens isn't a native 21:9 lens, it's not like true cinema, but you still get a sort of cinematic feel to it, if you like. You can also add a colour grade to this if you wanted to kind of make it look more cinematic. But I just wanted to show you this mode. This is in the wide angle camera mode, so we'll just show you in standard. So this is just the standard mode, and again, those crop bars do make it seem more cinematic, although obviously it's a very clean digital image at the moment, we can see. Okay, so recording now at 4K at 30 frames per second. Now there is a recording cap of 10 minutes in this mode, so none of the other modes have any recording caps. However, this does. Strange, given that this is the Kirin 980 chip, I thought that the recording limit would have been banished for this, but never mind, you can still get plenty of video and you can stitch them together if you want. Now, it does record in stereo sound in this mode as well. Now, unfortunately, you still get the little bit of choppiness in recording. Now, it is quite windy up here. Fun fact, it is currently 2,000 feet above ground level. First thing we'll do is we'll just check out the autofocus in 4K at 30 frames per second. So we've got lots of text on here. So we've got nice, continual, smooth autofocus in pretty much every resolution, which is great. Now, just to show some slightly closer objects, I brought my trusty old OnePlus with me, and you can see we get a nice, if we just show the text, show the back of the phone, so we get a good and quick lock with the autofocus. We can move closer, and once again we get pretty close as well, so we're pretty much at the infinity of the focus module there. So that's probably the most comfortable you're going to get. So this is the standard video mode. So this is just with the 1x cameras that comes up on the screen. Now you can use the 3x zoom as well, and that allows us to get a closer look at those objects. Now what you can do, you can actually just slide here, and that will give you up to 10x zoom on your subject. So you can see there we're pretty much very close to that turbine, a bit further ahead there. And if we just zoom, so you can pretty much choose your zoom. So at 10x zoom, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and now we're back to our standard mode. Let's just take a look at this magnificent scenery. You can see why we are so far up here. We've got this incredible vista out ahead of us, which on any day, sunny, cloudy day like today, just gives you this incredible viewpoint over where we live. Now the best impact you can get from this is by using the wide angle camera, and that gives us this more sweeping view. So, as I said, the electronic image stabilization works in every mode, including the wide angle camera, so you get nice stabilized footage no matter what you use, and that is quite a view. Now, I did post a photo of this on Twitter a few days back, where I just wanted to make sure I included this in the video test. Okay, so it's very difficult to check exposure in these conditions, but just moving the phone around, there's no blowout or anything when you move between different scenes. So just looking out into the cloud in the distance there, just moving the phone around, there's absolutely no issues at all with the exposure. It picks up those clouds really, really nicely, and you can see way out into the distance there as well. Just moving between, you can see the exposure changing quickly there to compensate for the grass, and then just gradually moving back to a standard image. It reminds me very much of the Galaxy S9 and the Galaxy Note 9 in the way it handles its exposure. It's extremely quick and it works on the fly very quickly indeed, which is great. Now what you also get, as well as the standard video modes, is a selection of scene modes. Essentially they're filters, and I'll just run through those very quickly with you. So the first one is AI color, but that doesn't seem to be working today. Usually it gives a pop of color on a particular subject and then keeps everything either black and white or a slightly hued color. But we'll move on to the next one, which is the background blur. So we're going to use the key fob for our car as a subject. So if you just hold that up, what it essentially does, it gives you kind of a portrait mode for video. Now it's a little bit hit and miss. It does work better on larger subjects, but as you can see, it does have some trouble focusing. Admittedly, this is quite a small subject, and it does struggle to keep a focus on. So you can see it's extremely blurred background there, very bokeh-ish for video. So if you move around, you can see there it just has some trouble finding some focus lock there. So you hold it around about here, and we just move the camera around. So you get the idea. So the next mode is vintage, and you can see it kind of gives a very kind of muted palette to the video. Just move around, if you can see the car behind us. You can see it gives kind of like a filter over the top of the image. Look into the sun. So it's pretty good. It's a cool thing. You could probably add these in post-production instead, but I kind of like the look of this one. It's a very soft look to the footage and lends it kind of this warm overall look, which is nice. Now the next filter is suspense, and as you can see, it's pretty much almost black and white, but there is small amounts of color in the video. We can see the bottom of this tree, so you can just make out some of the greenery on the leaves. And as we move around, should be just about able to make out the colour of the car. You can just about see that there, a very muted navy colour. And again, this is quite a cool filter, but again, these are all things you can add in post-production, but they're good if you want to add these while you're recording your own video. And this works in all of the resolution modes as well. We're currently in 4K at 30 frames per second, but it does work only in the rear video modes, not on the front. The front mode only allows for beauty shot. And the last mode available is called Fresh, and it's not hugely different to the standard video, to be perfectly honest. It doesn't look that much different. I suppose it dials back the colour just a little bit, but again, it doesn't look hugely different to the standard video modes. So that's the end of the Huawei Mate 20 Pro Ultimate video test in daylight conditions. I actually think it's a very capable smartphone for photo and video, more for photo than video. The video does suffer, as I said, from some frame rate issues. It can be a little bit choppy now and again, but that's nothing that can't be fixed with a few software updates a bit further down the line. It does spoil the overall experience somewhat, especially with 4K when you're trying to capture some nice looking scenery. But on the whole, I do think the Huawei Mate 20 Pro as an imaging device makes a really good overall package. And like I say, once Huawei can sort that out, then it will be massively improved. Some of the modes are a little bit superfluous. I wish they would have spent some time tweaking the actual frame rate of the video rather than adding those otherwise a little bit unused options for me personally, but I can see the value that some people would have from those. So if you've got any questions or comments, please leave those down in the comment section, and I will do my best to get back to you as soon as possible. And don't forget, if you're new around here, then please consider subscribing so you don't miss more Ultimate video tests coming very, very soon. The Moto E5 Play is coming up very soon, as well as the Xiaomi Redmi Note 6 Pro. Keen to try out some of these lower end devices with their good value price points and see what they can do in the video stakes. But for now, this has been my Ultimate video test for the Huawei Mate 20 Pro. My name's Mr. West, and I will catch you guys later.